Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. You know how this works. We take your sources, we extract the good stuff.
Yeah, the hidden gems.
Exactly. So this time we're going all the way back to the mid-20th century, to Harlem.
A lot of history there.
Oh, yeah. We're diving into the life of Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson.
Bumpy Johnson, huh?
Yeah, pretty intriguing guy from what I hear. We're working with an excerpt from his Wikipedia page.
Sounds good to me.
So, ready to unearth some fascinating insights?
Let's do it.
I gotta say, though, when I hear the name Bumpy, I picture like a cuddly teddy bear.
Haha. Not quite the image that comes to mind with a gangster.
Right. But I guess looks can be deceiving.
In this case, definitely. Actually, the nickname came from a bump on the back of his head.
Oh, so no cool gangster origin story.
Well, not for the nickname anyway. His life was a whole other story.
Okay, a bump on the head, gotta be a distinctive feature, so let's go back to the beginning then.
Charleston, South Carolina, 1905.
He was born in 1905. Wow. And his childhood sounds rough. Even before, organized crime.
Oh, absolutely. When he was just 10 years old, his older brother, Willie.
Willie?
Yeah, he was accused of, killing a white man.
Oh, wow.
And this was the South.
Yeah.
Racial tensions were all
Yeah.
high. His parents, they feared the worst,
Right.
understandably. So they sent Willie north
To get away.
to live with relatives, yeah. They even mortgaged their home to make it happen.
Really? Wow. That's a huge sacrifice.
Definitely. And you can only imagine how that kind of event, shapes you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, how things could have been different if his family, hadn't faced that kind of pressure.
Right.
Did that experience, influence his attitude toward law enforcement later?
Tough to say for sure, but it definitely couldn't have helped.
Yeah.
And there's more. Johnson himself, he ended up in Harlem.
Oh, so he moved north too?
Yeah, when he was 14.
Yeah.
Sent to live with his sister.
What, were his parents worried about him?
Yeah, actually they were. Worried about his tempo and his attitude toward white people. Seems they were trying to, protect him.
But maybe sent him right into, the lion's den.
You could say that.
I mean, Harlem in the 1920s, a cultural explosion, yeah. But also poverty and, organized crime.
Lots of it. And Johnson, he dropped out of high school, fell into a life of crime.
So that's how it started.
Pretty much. We started working for this gangster, William Hewitt.
Hewitt, okay. So that was his first taste of the underworld.
Yeah. But his real rise to power, that came through Madame Stephanie St. Clair.
Hold on, Madame Stephanie St. Clair. That sounds, fancy.
Right. The Queen of Numbers in Harlem.
Queen of Numbers. That's not what I expected.
She ran the numbers racket. An illegal lottery thrived in black communities.
Oh, okay. It's the numbers racket.
Yeah. It was, complicated.
Yeah.
For many, it was a lifeline. A way to make money when, legitimate opportunities weren't there.
It is discrimination.
Exactly. But it was a dangerous game, too. And St. Clair. She was a force to be reckoned with.
So not exactly a fairy tale, but I'm curious. How did Bumpy Johnson end up working for her?
He became her enforcer, her muscle.
He was young, trying to make his way. Was it the power that drew him in, the money?
Maybe both.
Yeah.
But it was also a war. St. Clair was fighting Dutch Schultz.
Dutch Schultz, the mobster.
The one and only. They were fighting for control of the Harlem numbers racket.
Wow. A black woman taking on the mafia?
It was huge. A battle for territory and respect.
Yeah.
And it got violent.
How violent?
Over 40 murders.
40. Jeez. We talk about these big names, but it's easy to forget the human cost.
True that.
And for Bumpy, this was more than business, right? He was fighting for his life, his place in Harlem.
Absolutely. He wasn't just muscle. Johnson was smart, strategic when Schultz was killed.
Oh, that's right. He was killed.
Johnson saw an opportunity, negotiated a deal with the mafia, cemented his power in Harlem.
So ambitious,
Yeah.
but also a pragmatist, knew when to make deals with, the devil.
You could say that.
Walking a tightrope. That's a good way to put it. Balancing his ambitions with the realities of power in Harlem.
Exactly.
But this deal with the mafia, did it change how the numbers racket worked? Was it better for the people or worse?
It's complicated. The violence, it did go down after Schultz was gone.
Okay.
But the mafia, well, they were still profiting.
Yeah.
So did the community benefit? Debatable.
Yeah, I guess so. Like that saying, meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Right.
But let's talk about, the morality of the numbers racket. We've said that for a lot of people, it was a source of income, but was it exploitative?
That's where things get really interesting. You got to remember the context. Legitimate opportunities, for black people especially, scarce.
Hmm.
Systemic racism.
Yeah, for sure.
The numbers racket. Yeah, illegal. But it let people support their families. Gave them a bit of agency in a system that was stacked against them.
So was Bumpy Johnson seen as a villain or someone providing a service, even if it was flawed?
That's the question, isn't it? Some folks, they saw him as a protector, someone who kept the streets safe, provided for his people.
Oh.
Others, they saw the criminal, profiting from their desperation. It's a gray area, and that's what makes his story so fascinating.
Yeah, totally. It's a reminder that history, it's not black and white, it's all about perspective.
Exactly.
Speaking of perspective, let's move on to his later years. 1952, right?
Right.
Convicted on drug conspiracy charges, 15 years in prison.
Alcatraz. Inmate number 1117.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty wild to think about. This guy who'd ruled the streets of Harlem, now stuck in America's toughest prison.
Alcatraz, that name, man. It carries so much weight. Must have been a harsh reality check.
It wasn't a vacation, that's for sure.
No, I imagine not.
But prison, it couldn't break him. He got out in '63, and despite, a few arrests.
He stayed active.
Oh, yeah. But there's this incident in 1965. It makes you question the whole ruthless gangster image.
What happened?
He staged a sit-in at a police station.
A sit-in. Bumpy Johnson. Seriously. Yeah.
Yep. Demanding they stop the constant surveillance of black neighborhoods.
That's not what you'd expect. Was he, becoming socially conscious? Or was it something else?
It's interesting, right? Some folks might see it as, a publicity stunt to gain favor with the community.
Hmm.
But others, they say it was genuine, a real concern about police overreach and racial injustice.
It adds another layer to his character. This guy, who operated in the shadows, had a reputation for violence. He was also willing to take a stand publicly.
It challenges the easy narratives,
Mm.
the labels.
So a gangster with a conscience or a master manipulator.
Maybe both.
His story ends in '68. Heart attack. At Wells Restaurant in Harlem, age 62.
Having coffee. Chicken and hominy grits. Pretty ordinary when you think about it. This
Yeah.
larger-than-life figure gone from a heart attack.
It's almost like a scene from a movie. The bustling restaurant, the sudden silence.
Life imitating art,
Yeah.
you say. And Johnson's life, it did have that cinematic quality.
Yeah, you're right.
He's buried in Woodlawn Cemetery, the Bronx. The final resting place for a man who, lived a life full of contradictions.
He definitely left a mark. And his story, it continues to fascinate us. It's been told and retold. Movies, TV shows. Lawrence Fishburne, Forrest Whitaker, they both played him.
Those portrayals, even when they take liberties, they tap into something. Our fascination with, people who operate outside the law, who blur the lines between good and bad.
It makes you wonder, though, have those portrayals shaped how we see organized crime, especially in black communities?
Good point.
Do they romanticize guys like Bumpy Johnson? Downplay the violence, the exploitation?
The power of media representation, it's real.
And it leads to a bigger question, I think. How do we reconcile those two images? The ruthless gangster and the community leader, the guy who fought against injustice.
That's what historians are trying to figure out.
It's a tough one for sure. Seems like the more we learn about him, the more complicated he gets.
Yeah, it's true. A man of contradictions. Shaped by some pretty powerful forces.
His life really shows those complexities, doesn't it? Race, poverty, the pull of power, all of that.
Definitely.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Bumpy Johnson's world, what's the big takeaway? What should our listener remember?
I'd say it's about looking beyond the surface. Don't settle for the simple stories, Bumpy Johnson, he was more than just a label. He was a man of his time. He was dealing with limited choices. Impossible odds, really.
It reminds us that history is full of these figures, right? People who don't fit neatly into boxes, good or bad.
Yeah.
And their stories, I think they can teach us a lot about ourselves, about, the choices we make, the things that shape our lives.
For sure. And when we see these stories in the media, documentaries, movies, whatever, we got to remember there's always more to it.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Hopefully you've come away with a fresh perspective on Bumpy Johnson and a deeper understanding of how complicated history really is.